One of Descartes' quotes is, "In order to seek truth, it is necessary, once in the course of our life, to doubt, as far as possible, of all things." And for a long time, I studied philosophy for years. I read a lot of books. Some of my favorites are uh, Being in Time by Martin Heidegger. And I spent an extensive amount of time on that book and I still haven't gotten through it. I always go back little by little and see what I can figure out there. And I read a lot of Kierkegaard, a lot of Fear and Trembling, and I also read a lot of fiction, Kafka, Dostoevsky, and while I was reading and learning about philosophy and the great thinkers, I felt like I learned a lot, and yet I didn't really learn everything or anything. I mean, anything. But I felt like something was missing when I was studying. I came across Metaphysics by Aristotle, and I started reading that, and there was something in me that doubted everything that I had read. And I think for the first time in my life, I realized that maybe, and this is just my opinion, this is everything I say here is my opinion. I felt like the studying of philosophy was there, but the experience of philosophy was gone, or not yet introduced, I should say. I really I really enjoy asking the difficult questions in life, but I think more so I enjoy experiencing them even more. The reason why I came to this conclusion is because when I started reading metaphysics, I realized that philosophy, even though there's a lot of logic and formulas to it, philosophy to me and metaphysics specifically to me is very much like you have a net, but the net has a hole in it. And so you are definitely capturing something, but before you can pull up the net to see what that something is, it's already slipped out through the hole. And that's kind of what metaphysics has been like for me, experiencing it anyway. It's very hard to explain. But anyway, so I actually took a break from, because I was very burnt out too. I get very burnt out easily because I often put too much on my shoulders at once and I don't take care of myself like I should. But anyway, so I decided to take a solid 6 months starting in like August, I believe. I Instead of studying constantly and reading constantly and trying to get a meaning out of it or get an interpretation out of it, I sat back and I went into that mode of doubt. But more so than that, I tried to put myself into a mode of forgetting. And through this forgetting, I feel like I really started to find creativity that evolved from this experiencing of metaphysics. I was thinking about a lot of ways that I could experiment with this to sort of go into that mode of experiencing the metaphysical. And instead of just doubting everything. I knew I Because to me the doubting is more like a mode of forgetting. Instead of doing that, I kind of set out to become nothing. And I what I mean by that is it's not that I become nothing, like I don't exist. It's just putting myself in a mode where I I set myself I set myself up so that anything can sort of unfold. Where it's a kind of letting go, if that makes sense. It's another thing about the metaphysical. It's I believe it is probably the most difficult thing to actually put in words and describe. And I do think that to kind of get to the core of it, you have to explain it in a roundabout way. And I'll get to that a little later. But what I want to focus on today is yes, I am coming back and I'm starting to make videos again, but it's not going to be like a regular thing. In my opinion, I believe that the metaphysical is operates very irrationally and it's constantly changing. So I would rather post when and make a video when a moment strikes me and I feel compelled to do it than actually feel like I just have to. I love you too. When I sort of got into this mode of nothing, something happened which I now call the yo yo effect, which I will explain later. But basically, it's where I found my creativity and my art. I started writing these it's like prosy thought dumps, poetic thought dumps. And I would do that every single night, almost every single night for the last 6 months. And I actually, what would I, what I would do is I would kind of find a feeling within that nothingness and not capture it but rather ride with it. It's almost like when you have a yo-yo and you throw it down and you give it momentum. I found like a feeling that gave that idea momentum and I just kind of rolled with it. And I didn't really think about what I was writing. And I think because I didn't think about what I was writing, something more came out of it than if I would have thought about it. And now I often just kind of write whatever. And like I find a word and I'm like, we're rolling with it. But anyway, I really want to share these some of these thought dumps with you to try to explain what I'm trying to explain here. And yes, I know this is all over the place, but that's okay. So one night I wrote this, and because I was trying to figure out, well, what would the structure of the metaphysical be like? What would the structure of like God be like? And I saw a video one day of somebody using, or no, they were making a kaleidoscope, and I thought it was the coolest thing. And then I was like, oh my gosh, is this it? Of course, that a kaleidoscope does not do it perfect justice, but it is the closest I have gotten so far. Anyway, this is what I wrote about it. Life unfolds in a kaleidoscope without reason or measure, without a solid structure or logic. How could it be you never knew? No, you never knew what was about to encounter you. But that is the loveliness of life, the rise from the fall, the grace that says, no, my child, this is not all. When we look into a kaleidoscope, we often see like one thing. But then when we turn it, we see something different. Now, all of the perspectives within that kaleidoscope are there, but the way that you turn it determines what you see. I I wonder if life unfolds like a kaleidoscope, something that is always changing, but it's almost like we know that there's going to be a turn. We know that it's going to change, but only God knows within the planes of the metaphysical. Only God knows what it's going to change to exactly. And because we don't know what the turn is going to be, that like the next turn is going to be, it could really be anything, I think. And goodness. No, we can look at the structure of a kaleidoscope and say this is how a kaleidoscope works. But I think in the metaphysical, that is the why. Why does the kaleidoscope work? Why are we seeing this certain thing and not this thing when we turn it this way? Now, I know I mentioned without a solid structure or logic in this passage. And I think logic, you think about math and how 2 plus 2 equals 4, and we can see the how with that, but we don't see the why. We just know that there are segments, and if you manipulate them in a certain way, it gets us an answer, but we don't know why it gives us that answer. And that's why I like that's why I think that there is definitely is a God. And I think oftentimes the why is really irrational. I mean, there are so many times in my life where I think I'm going to get a certain answer because I've taken all these steps, and yet what has been unfolded and revealed is just mind blowing. Like, I don't, and it's like, oh, how did it unfold this way? Why did God bring things into my life that were this way and not that way? And why did God take such a roundabout way to tell me something or show me something? And so I've been really exploring the why, the metaphysical why. And again, I cannot preface this enough. These are my opinions. Take this with a grain of salt. There are great thinkers that you need to read, and I don't want you to ever listen to my ideas and be like, that's the one. That's the one. I'm rolling with it. Oh, this keeps falling. But yeah, so I wanted to come back here, and I wanted to start doing videos on a whim just because I wanted to, just because I had something inside of me saying, like, hey, you need to say something, you should share something. I think a lot of times I was hesitant on uh, sharing things that I've been studying or experiencing um, in the philosophical realm, because I know there are people who speak so much better than I do, and they know far more terms than I do. And so I think I've shied away from it for a long time, but I think it is so true that everybody can have a very interesting perspective to bring to the table. And I think that even if we are wrong in the end, it is good to bring that perspective to others and open a discussion. So that is that's my thought for today. And I will see you, I don't know,